I think it's a sucky situation that Florida State's in. And I feel it for FSU fans too. They're like, what in the world is going on? You don't even get to really celebrate an ACC championship. That's just thrown out the door. And now you've got some of your key players and some young studs like Rodney Hill saying that they want to lead the program. It sucks.
Hey guys, it's Terrence Mann. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Noles.
Hey, what's up? This is Peter Ward, a.k.a. P-Dub, in the house. So we're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go live, go Noles.
Hi, this is Charlie Ward, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, Go Noles.
This is Terrell Buckley. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. No Bloody.
But perhaps better known as the greatest corner to ever step on a football field, Deion Primetime Sanders.
Great Deion Sanders, my brother. What's going on, man? I could wake up to that greeting every day, man. That was awesome.
Hello, Noles fans. This is former Seminole Derek Brooks, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, presented to you by Noel Game Day.
James Wilder Jr. What's going on, James?
Thanks for having me on. FSOD, Florida State or Die, and go Noles.
William Bar None Floyd.
Gentlemen, what's up?
What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameDay.com. We're here live on a feeling a little bit better, maybe wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening. We're here nonetheless, and we've got a lot to talk about this evening. Man, oh man, oh man. It seems like this is going to be the start of what should be a pretty entertaining offseason, even though we're not officially in the offseason yet for Florida State football. But quite a bit of stuff happening left and right with the transfer portal. Florida State's got a big-time recruiting class. They're trying to bring in transfer targets. We're talking top transfer quarterbacks, two of them coming into Tallahassee this weekend to visit Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. We're going to talk Marvin Jones Jr., who was for Florida State, went to Georgia. He's now entered the NCAA transfer portal, so we'll be discussing that as well. We're going to talk about DJ Lundy, of course. He just posted just a little bit ago. It always seems to be that way, setting us up with some good topics as always. But DJ Lundy actually tweeting that he intends on entering the NCAA transfer portal. We're going to talk Malcolm Ray, who also says that he's intending on entering the transfer portal. And then at the end, we're going to talk some recruiting with a big weekend ahead. And then also, too, at the very end, we're going to talk a little bit of some FSU basketball and what the future lies under Leonard Hamilton and the basketball squad. But with me this evening is Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer, sick as well. And then down below is our editor-in-chief, Dustin Lewis. Gentlemen, how are we feeling another week to maybe start feeling better, or is that anger and rage still in you guys?
I don't know if it's going away. I don't know if anyone read Austin's column, but 1 week later, and some change now, the anger over Florida State snub not fading around the country has been pretty impressive. But I don't know if Austin's sick or if he's just sick of watching Florida State basketball the last couple of weeks. It's been a crazy time with you got the transfer portal stuff going on, high school recruiting. The early signing day early signing period starts 1 week from today in Florida State, trying to hold on to some guys and add a couple more down the stretch. Then at the same time, you got bowl game preparations going on. We'll be back out at practice next week as the Seminoles get ready to face Georgia in the Orange Bowl, and before we know it, we'll all be up there in Fort Lauderdale. Well, I guess down there in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm. I'm both sick because of the current weather situation in North Carolina, where it went from 60 degrees to 20 degrees in like 2 days. And I'm also just sick of all the bullshit between basketball and Kirk Herbstreit and everything else. I'm just over it.
This is the most I've had from VZ cussing in a while. I don't know. I had nothing to do with it. It's not me, but VZ's had a rough stretch here. But yeah, we're in the thick of it, man. Even though Florida State's preparing for a bowl game, we obviously didn't expect for it to be of this kind of caliber where Florida State isn't going to get in the college football playoffs, and then they got to go face, a really, really talented and well-coached team under Kirby Smart with Georgia. But then you're also dealing with all this transfer portal craziness in Florida State, like you said, Dustin, trying to hold on to these top-tier recruits in their class. Then you've also, dip in some drama in there with Florida State's players that you would think would be competing against Georgia in just a couple of weeks in Miami announcing their intentions of entering the transfer portal, just to stir up a few things. We're going to jump into that discussion here in just a minute. But as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, make sure you hit that like button. It would be much appreciated. It goes out to more FSU fans, gets them in here to help give us some topics and discuss in the comments. But make sure you subscribe to on your YouTube. We'll have tons of content while down there in Miami as we get you guys prepared for Florida State's Orange Bowl against the Bulldogs. Gentlemen, let's jump right into it. I think everybody here came in early to, see what our thoughts and maybe our discussion would be on with DJ Lundy. He tweeted.
Well, breaking, we have another one, actually. Rodney Hill just put out on Twitter that he's going to be entering the transfer portal right now.
Oh, look at that. Here we go. This is just as fun as it gets. I'll try to bring up that tweet right here. This happens so many times on this show. So you just kind of get our raw reactions. But D-Lou, let's speak on this one, because this is a kid that you are very, very high on. And I am too, just watching him in practice, and you see his play style and the way that he runs. Here's what Rodney Hill just tweeted live. He said, "I want to thank my coaches and FSU for bringing me in. Much love to all my teammates and the strength staff and trainers that have worked with me while I've been here, but I will be entering the transfer portal." And then let's just go over to DJ Lundy's real quick, because I think there's a lot of similarities between these and also Pat Payton's from last week. But DJ Lundy tweeting, "Noel Nation, it's always been my dream to play at FSU. It's been a blessing to be able to play at this wonderful university. This decision hasn't been easy, but after much thought and prayer, I've decided that it will be best for me, for my career, to enter the transfer portal." So here we are at a pretty interesting spot for Florida State. Two potential guys that, definitely Lundy, a veteran guy, expected to be a starter in 2024, and also Rodney Hill, who would be fighting for that number one spot going into next season with Trey Benson moving on from the program after the season. What are we dealing with here? Just go ahead with that, and I'm going to make sure that we have an article going for that. I'm sure you've already checked too, Dustin.
Yeah, I was mentioning there in Discord, but I think it's just this is where we're at now in this current age of college football with NIL and everything. And, we're at the point where players can renegotiate each offseason. I think when a guy's potentially not getting the number that he wants, having this ability to enter the transfer portal and see what's out there while also still being able to communicate with Florida State is something that's very attractive for guys. You look at Patrick Payton maybe last week, Florida State's not projected to return a ton of depth up there up front in 2024. And he has every right to go out and negotiate for a higher number. And same thing with DJ Lundy. You're going to be losing some linebackers after this season. You look at Rodney Hill's situation, Trey Benson is going to be moving on, maybe some more guys in that backfield. So I think that's just where we're at right now in the current age of the sport.
Yeah, DJ seems more like an NIL play, just like we've been seeing with Pat Payton, and kind of like we projected might happen with Josh Farmer and a couple other guys. I just think that's what the situation is there. Obviously, it just happened like 30 minutes ago, so a lot of information still coming out there. The Rodney Hill news doesn't surprise me. I think I even said last week I wouldn't be surprised to see someone from this room in the portal, because it's a stacked room. It just really is. There's so much talent, and we all trust Norvell.
Rodney, though, but for Rodney,
yeah, Rodney is tough. Obviously, he's a great player. I've called him Baby Pacheco a few times on this podcast, but I had a feeling someone might go, as much as we don't want it to happen. And he may not even leave. I think a lot of this is NIL. I'm not saying it is with Rodney. I'm not saying it is with DJ. It's just what we're speculating right now.
Yeah,
and it should be noted with Pat Payton that he has deleted all the tweets about him entering the portal, unretweeted all the stuff. So I think it's way too early to react on a lot of this stuff.
It's different for everybody.
Fine for. I mean, it's college football free agency. That's where we're at. We're now really in the first third year of this, where you're getting all the kind of, hey, you got agents per se talking with you and giving you some opinionated ideas of, hey, you put this out, you go hear from also other schools as well, but you can't necessarily do that. Of course, if you want to be, you can cheat the system a little bit, but you don't enter your name into the NCAA transfer portal. There's another one too that we need to mention. Malcolm Ray, Florida State's defensive tackle, who has had a really nice season for Florida State this year, has announced to enter the transfer portal too. But like you said, Austin, in the production meeting, hasn't officially put his name in there either, and Pat Payton hasn't either, like you were saying. So what are we? It's quite obvious of what's going on here. And what sucks about it though is that you got a bowl game in a couple weeks, and you're playing a big time program in Georgia, which I think is really diminishes the opportunity for some of these players, even like guys like Pat Payton, that I think too would be great for him to get on film, see what he can do against a Georgia offensive line of that talent. Or, also too, a guy like Rodney Hill here, get some reps, if Trey Benson isn't a full go, like he wasn't a full go in that ACC championship, go out there and put some game film on against a top tier program like Georgia. And, Malcolm Ray, there's a handful of guys that I think Florida State, not even these guys enter the transfer portal, but there's maybe guys that are thinking about heading into the NFL, like a Keon Coleman or even Johnny Wilson, having that extra game and showing film against a really talented team could do you some good. I understand you'll have the Senior Bowl opportunities, or you'll have, of course, the NFL Combine, but to be on that national stage in the Orange Bowl in New Year's 6, I think says a lot. And I think they're really missing out these kind of opportunities. But specifically for these guys right here, it's all NIL related. And they're seeing these guys. We talked about it last week with Battle's End. Guys are getting signed, but everybody's getting probably a different number. I don't know how that seriously goes down and contracts and such, but they're seeing what their options are outside of what they would possibly get at Florida State. But it's just kind of really, I just wonder what goes on in Mike Norvell's head and the coaching staff. They've done everything right, and they've done what they need to do to fix the culture in there. But what does this do to your teammates? And do I really want to go play in this bowl game? Do I want to play against Georgia? What is the mindset now? And you've gone on a roller coaster of a ride where Florida State just got done winning an ACC championship. You were fighting so much last year just to reach 10 wins for the program. And then you go in the next year and you go undefeated 13-0. Yes, you get snubbed from the college football playoff, but you won an ACC championship. And now just not even 24 hours later, guys already ready to leave the program. And it's about money, it's easy just to, I don't know. I think it's a sucky situation that Florida State's in. And I feel it for FSU fans too. They're like, what in the world is going on? You don't even get to really celebrate an ACC championship. That's just thrown out the door. And now you've got some of your key players and some young studs like Rodney Hill saying that they want to lead the program. It sucks. It's not a fun situation to be in. And, hopefully this gets handled a little bit easier, because you're seeing Fabo, quote tweet DJ Lundy, wishing him the best and such. And you could definitely see some of his teammates vying for him to go get those opportunities and the money side of things. But it's a wild stage of college football that we're in right now, gentlemen.
It's tough. It's crazy that Florida State's got a bowl game in less than 20 days. And, at this point, it's still pretty fluid with who's still going to be on the roster and who's actually going to play in that game against Georgia, where, like you said, Logan, I mean, it's been now 10 days since Florida State won the ACC championship and was snubbed from the college football playoff. And, it looked like they had everything in front of them, but now everything's come to a halt like this just so quickly. It's hard to wrap your head around, but at the same time, with the transfer portal and the introduction of NIL, this is just kind of open the doors for college football to go in this direction and allow people to negotiate on their own terms. And, I can see how if a transfer comes into a certain program and earns a big role out of the gate and a big paycheck, how maybe it would miff some guys who have been there from the beginning, like a DJ Lundy or a Patrick Payton or Rodney Hill, who all signed with Florida State out of high school to join this program rather than transferring in. And yeah, it allows where we're at, just creates these scenarios. It allows for it to happen.
I think a lot of it could be fixed. I know a lot of people have been saying what can be done. Like, why do we keep letting this happen? I think a lot of it can be fixed by pushing some of these dates back, like pushing early signing day and the start of transfer portal back to maybe the first week of January instead of, mid-December. I think that's what caused a lot of this chaos, and that'll get bowl games to mattering again because people are going to want to get that last game on film instead of entering now and they don't have to play in that bowl game. I get there's some stuff with, they want to get their first spring football. It's easier when, there's not a semester going on. I get it, but I feel like it'd be a much better situation for college football if you wait until after all the bowl games have been played.
Scheduling could definitely help in that regard. But, for Florida State's sake and what they're having to prepare for, but, also, too, a lot of coaches back on the road, visiting with players. It seems like, a key factor in this, a lot of the coaches out on the road during the weekdays, middle of the week, and then the coaches get back home on the weekend. And we saw some things clear up with Pat Payton. He hasn't officially entered the NCAA transfer portal. And, these coaches sitting down with the players, I think, clean up some things as well. But then, you also got to go to the NIL route and what, fixes things on that end. But for Rodney Hill, I'm seeing a comment in here about, from on YouTube about, a bunch of mid leaving. Rodney Hill ain't mid. That's a concern for me for Florida State losing one of their top talented future running backs. That's not a good place to be in whatsoever. Florida State went to Rodney Hill quite a bit throughout the season too, gentlemen, because he was the only one that was able to, find his groove in a game and be their best running back of the day. And Rodney Hill was called upon in a lot of those games. But that's a concerning thing. And I understand Lundy, he's kind of in that same group of guys that, we saw from last year with Farmer and Darrell Jackson, that there's a defensive sided group that are looking to get more out of, more than, they evaluate themselves a little bit higher and they're willing to test the waters and risk it for a biscuit almost. But for Rodney Hill, that's a cruddy situation that, Coach Yak and that Florida State coaching staff is having to deal with at the moment.
It's shocking, and it's a big blow to that room, especially with us thinking that Trey Benson probably going to move on to the NFL after this season, and that would mean Rodney Hill in line to play a pretty big role for Florida State in 2024 with Lawrence Toafili expected back in the fold. We saw Keziah Holmes sign a deal with Just Win Management a couple days ago. It looks like he's trending towards a return to Florida State next season. You still got Samuel Singleton in the fold, but now to have Benson, Rodney Hill, and CJ Campbell all transfer out or go to the NFL in this short of a span, it's really tough. You do have Cam Davis and Mekhi Danzy coming in. You've got to wonder now, does this have Florida State potentially kick the tires on a running back in the transfer portal to add an influx of experience immediately, like we've already seen them have success with Benson in the past and also Jashawn Corbin? But it definitely changes the dynamic a ton. And, we expected Florida State to be a little bit more selective, I think, in the transfer portal this go-around. But now with some of these unexpected departures and entries, and we'll see if they actually officially get in the portal, Florida State might be going hunting a little longer than they anticipated.
Maybe I'm in the minority. I'm not that concerned if he does leave. I really like Keziah Holmes. I really like Lawrence Toafili. And, granted, Sam Singleton only played in a quarter of a game, but there's definitely some potential there. And Cam Davis is a guy I think you have to get on the field right away. So I'm not that concerned about it. We all like Rodney Hill here, but as I just said, I really trust Norvell when it comes to running back evaluations. And if he decides that it's best for Rodney Hill to move on, I think the running back room is plenty talented enough.
I think, Mike Norvell, he evaluates talent, one of the best in the country, putting running backs in the room. Jordan Travis just tweeted with a interesting emoji. I don't know what that is showing up here on TweetDeck, but let's see what he's got here. Probably shocked, and I was about to mention. Well, I was about to mention too. A lot. It seems like a majority of these guys that are tweeting this, they have not sat down with a coach about it. This is all decided on their own end. I don't think he's sat down with the coach, and I'm not confirmed or anything. But a lot of these seem like this is kind of all right. Just made up the decision on your own type of deal. Hasn't had a full on discussion with the coaching staff, and we usually will see that cleared up. It's usually around the middle of the week where things like this happen. Coaching staff isn't near or in Tallahassee, and then get back and things are cleared up. But yeah, Jordan Travis, a little shocked there by Rodney Hill entering the transfer portal. But yeah, I mean, Mike Norvell does a great job in that running back room, and there is some guys that have shown some upside, but the player that's shown the most upside is Rodney Hill, and he's intending on entering the transfer portal, and you've got a strong and talented, really good running back coming in this next class with Cam Davis specifically, and another one too in that running back room. But it's just something to it's like a lot of these. It's just something to monitor at the moment, type of deal. Until those names officially enter the transfer portal, you're kind of just waiting to see. Like I just said, the coaching staff is able to sit down with these guys and clear some things up. Because it sure isn't about, to me, at least for Rodney, definitely not for Pat Payton, and definitely not for Lundy. It's not about playing time here. It's just about getting those opportunities and getting the cash.
And we'll see what happens.
Eventually, Norvell is going to set the precedent that, hey, you can ask for all you want. You can leave if you want. I don't care. I think that point's coming because, there's only so much money. I get battles ends between all this stuff about, hey, we're getting such and such donations. We've been getting such great support from the fan base. It's not infinite. Eventually, you're going to have to let some guys go and say, hey, sorry.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a fluid situation, and I think it would hurt Florida State to lose, not only 3 running backs this offseason, but you think back to Treshaun Ward a year ago. That's 4 experienced backs moving on from the program. And you're going to have to replace them with guys who don't have as much experience in the system, like Kaiser, like Samuel Singleton, Cam Davis, Mekhi Danzig. You're going to have Lawrence Toafili back, but just that experience in the system and being able to learn under Coach Norvell and Coach Yak and Coach Atkins and getting the nuances of the offense and the system down, I think is a huge part of why these running backs have had success. And we'll see where it goes from here.
Let's talk about some transfer portal Florida State might be keeping a close eye on. We know there's a few names that are already visiting Tallahassee, and we're going to start in that quarterback room. Some talented guys coming in with some experience on the college football level. We're going to start with Washington State's Cam Ward. We were told today that Cam would be visiting Florida State early kind of this weekend. So something to watch. Florida State, looking into 2024, probably want to bring in a veteran quarterback. And, with Jordan Travis leaving now it opens up a spot to where Florida State can probably bring in an immediate quarterback that, understands. And if they can get down the system of Mike Norvell, can probably find some better fluidity offensively earlier on than, maybe pushing in a younger player or rolling back to a Tate Rodemaker. And you could still see, Brock Glenn, got Luke Rummenhoek coming into that 2024 class. But do you want to bring in a veteran transfer quarterback? And it seems like Florida State, yes, they want to do that. And so they're bringing in Cam Ward and also DJ from Oregon State, former Clemson quarterback. Florida State knows about DJ quite a bit. Didn't get to see a whole ton of playing time, actually being benched there. Dabo Sweeney kind of switching the quarterback room up there. And so he ended up intending on entering the transfer portal to Oregon State, which he did. But I'm going to bring up some stats for both of those quarterbacks. But thoughts on both of them? We were talking about in the production meeting and, kind of just trying to figure out who would fit the best in this offense, and also got to compare 2 different kind of weapons that these guys would be coming in to deal with rather than, what they had at Washington State and Oregon State.
It's an interesting dynamic for sure. I think this is a move that Florida State makes, adding a transfer quarterback. This is definitely a 1-year deal, and you bring in someone that can help the program a ton in 2024, while Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek continue to develop. It's kind of like a bridge, and then you go into 2025, I think, and that's going to be the year Kromenhoek and Glenn battle it out for the starting job. But DJ Uiagalelei and Cam Ward are two of the best transfers.
Butchered that.
Yeah, whatever. Two of the best transfers on the market. You called him DJ Ukulele before. We're gonna have to bring that video back up.
Yeah, exactly.
If he ends up choosing Florida State, we're gonna have to bring
That's
that
DJ
back
U.
up.
Like I said, I'm not even gonna give it a shot. I don't care.
It's Uiagalelei.
Wow, that is not how I would have expected. But two of the best options on the market, two guys that are really experienced. You know, you look at DJ and Florida State, they've got a ton of familiarity there facing them in 21 and 22, where he was able to lead Clemson to victories over the Seminoles, one in Tallahassee, one in Death Valley. And, you know, he's played in the ACC before, had a pretty good year over there in Oregon State, a career high in passing yards and yards per attempt, 21 touchdowns to 7 INTs. And I think there's a lot of potential there that Florida State could potentially tap with Tony Tokars and Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins working with him for a year. And Cam Ward, you know, dominated the Pac-12 for much of the last 2 years, put up some really good stats at Washington State, beat Wisconsin this year, beat Oregon State, very close loss to Washington. And they're just two very talented players, and they would both fit into what Florida State wants to do.
Yeah, we're having a debate about them before we started the podcast. Dustin would rather have DJ. I think I'd rather have Cam Ward, but it's one of those that Ward, I think, has the higher ceiling, whereas DJ has the higher floor. No matter who Norvell rocks with, we're going to be supportive of him, obviously, and we trust him to make the right decision. I'm not convinced DJ's that guy. I'm really not. They really relied on the run game this past year at Oregon State, which, granted, I think Florida State will as well. But all this narrative of he took such a massive step forward this season at Oregon State from where he was at Clemson, I just didn't see it. His stats are pretty similar. His interception rate is slightly higher, but he did throw less attempts and had a higher passer rating. But they're too similar to what he did at Clemson. We were all trashing him at Clemson. So we'll see. Norvell's going to get the best out of them no matter who he decides to get. I just think Ward I think he's just going to be a better playmaker. I just think that's who he is. I know he didn't win that much at Washington State last year, but as we just saw on that screen, a lot of those losses were close. It wasn't like he was getting blown out every game, take away the Arizona game. But like you said, he was in the game against Washington. He was close against Cal. He was close in all of these games. And if you get him a better team around him, I think he could be a successful quarterback in a good system.
I think there's pros and cons, you know, with both players. DJ obviously would be going into his 5th year in the FBS and has played in a ton of big games. I think everyone thinks back to, it's been years, but everyone thinks back to that performance he had against Notre Dame on the road where, I mean, he was just absolutely prolific. Like, the talent is there for him to turn into a potentially special player. And we've seen the way that, and they had more than 1 year to work with him, but what Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars and Atkins and that coaching staff were able to do with Jordan Travis throughout his time in Tallahassee, and to develop him, insane. And you got to think if they're able to do something similar with DJ, he could unlock a big part of his game. And Cam Ward, I mean, a great player as well, but, you know, this is a spot Florida State could potentially get into a bidding war with Miami, and I'm not sure that's something you want to go down. But having both these guys able to get into Tallahassee over the next couple of days, I think Florida State's going to do its part to make a big impression here and try and get at least one of them to lock down before they end up departing.
If it does end up being DJ, I'm either going to have a lot of content this next season. I'll be tweeting that ukulele video out every game for the next month, or for the next season, or I'm going to have a lot of crow to eat. Either way, I'll be here for him. I'm going to trust Norvell and Tokars and that staff no matter which direction they decide to go, and they've earned that right. And at the same time, there's other quarterbacks going in the portal as we speak, like Malik Murphy just entered the portal from Texas. I wouldn't mind kicking the tires on that.
Yeah, why not? Why not, right? You know, you see the attributes, and if you see what Coach Tokars has been able to do too with these quarterbacks, not only as your starter, but your backup as well, as being able to develop them and getting the system down too. And that's something that Mike Norvell, getting those two players, and they can fit the system well, but having the reliability and taking care of the ball is huge for this offense. And, you know, taking care of that running back room that's already coming in. You've got a talented room. We were talking about it earlier, but there's so much talent on the outside too. And you look at the future of the tight end room, wide receiver room, some of the true freshmen that are on the current roster right now with Hakeem Williams, also too with Vondravius Jacobs, who we all love. Man, I mean, too, look back at Hakeem Williams as well. A few flash plays too this season. Didn't know he had that speed. There's so much talent that any quarterback coming in should be kind of licking their chops at. And I'm really interested to see where these recruitments go. Definitely for Cam Ward when you're battling against an in-state rival like Miami. They're going to throw a lot of money. They have to win. They have to win for Mario Cristobal. They've got to win in 2024 and fight for an ACC championship. And DJ, someone that was at Clemson, he knows about Florida State very well. And, him coming down to Tallahassee and taking a visit I just don't know which one to really go with. Like you guys said, it's really just about who Mike Norvell and Tokars. I think they both see the talent in those guys and what they can do inside Florida State's offensive system. But actually getting down to sit and talk with these guys is big, and we know how big that is for also Mike Norvell. Bringing in guys of this caliber, you're bringing in a quarterback, a starting quarterback. You really want to make sure that you're bringing in a player that fits the culture and the mold that this program has been able to fix in the last couple of years. So that's another big thing that they've got to take care of. But yeah, I need to post this Rodney Hill thing to Facebook real quick. But anything else on quarterbacks for you guys, kind of keep an eye on? I know there are also some other transfer portal targets, D-Lou, that FSU is keeping an eye on and bringing in for some visits. But we're in the midst of a live breaking news type of scenario. And here we are. And
more breaking news. Trayshawn Ward has committed to Boston College.
Wow. Boston College staying in the ACC.
And staying in maroon and gold.
Yeah, he is.
Similar
matching
colors.
up with a talented quarterback, too.
Yeah, not quarterbacks, but Florida State did have a couple of transfer defensive ends in Tallahassee last weekend. You had Pittsburgh defensive end transfer Samuel Okunlola, also Georgia Tech defensive end transfer Kyle Kennard come through for their respective official visits. Okunlola declined an interview after his trip to Tallahassee. It sounds like he's going to take a couple more visits before making a decision, but a guy with a lot of upside, 3 years of eligibility remaining, and his brother actually plays for Miami, a former 5-star offensive tackle. Not sure if they're in the mix in his transfer recruitment, but an extremely talented player, showed some real flashes there at Pittsburgh as a member of the rotation this past season, and I think someone that Florida State's going to continue to monitor moving forward, someone that you could probably call a top target for them at the position right now. And then Kyle Kennard, someone that's played more football than Okunlola, been at Georgia Tech since 2020, and I believe has a year or two of eligibility remaining. But he got to meet with JP, Coach Odell, Coach Norvell during the visit to Tallahassee. Was there for about a day and a half or so and brought some members of his family. And, like a lot of transfers, they're not really focused on, the flashiness. They're there to get down to business. And he wanted to hear about how Florida State's going to be able to develop him. And they actually had Jared Verse speak with him a little bit. Verse himself, a transfer defensive end who came into Tallahassee and now is probably going to be a first-round pick during the NFL draft in April. So you got to wonder if that conversation had any type of impact on Kennard. Really stressed the legacy that Florida State has with developing these transfers, and also, just the history of this program, putting defensive ends into the NFL. So this is another one. Kennard said that he too is going to take some more visits, didn't want to name any potential destinations, but said a decision could come in the next week or so. So it seems like probably within 10 days, we should be knowing his next destination. But this is another one where Florida State right in the thick of it for an edge defender.
Yeah, they definitely need one. Versus leaving, whatever's going on with Pat Payton's, I think he's coming back, but you still need someone opposite him. I don't think Florida State wants to go to an edge by committee with Gilbert Edmond and Byron Turner, and maybe Boots has put on enough weight, and we'll see what else happens there. But they need someone that at least has production that they could put on that side right now. And, Kennard, and I'm not even going to, you said the guy's name for Pitt. I'm not going to try it. But between the two of them, they're solid players that they have production and they still have potential and can make an impact. I wouldn't be upset with either of them. At the same time, I think there's going to be some bigger names that enter the portal over this next week or two that Florida State may be more interested in. Like we saw Marvin Jones Jr. enter the portal this week. We'll see if Florida State decides to pursue there, but there will be some names, and Florida State will get a guy that fits them.
Yeah, it's due diligence, and there's some other guys out there that Florida State has expressed interest in, just haven't been able to set up official visits just yet. And, like you said, Austin, Marvin Jones Jr., a Florida State legacy who committed to the Georgia Bulldogs over the Seminoles back in that 2022 recruiting cycle, now in the transfer portal after 2 years in Athens. And you've got to think with Florida State, as you just said, needing at least one body, and it seems like multiple guys really to come in that defensive end room to make an impact next year. Could this be a potential spot for Jones Jr. to land, follow in his father's footsteps, and then start to have a bounce back and, really show off that 5-star potential that he had back in high school? It seemed like maybe he was playing a little bit out of position in Georgia, playing that outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme, would be able to get back to the traditional defensive end spot going into Adam Fuller's defense. And, he's had some injuries down there in Georgia that kind of limited him this past offseason leading up to the 2023 season. But there's a ton of talent there. Florida State has the previous relationship, the ties to his dad, and he played at American Heritage in high school, and at the time was actually coached by current Florida State defensive backs coach Pat Surtain.
Yeah, that's a good nugget there. Something worth noting because, too, there's so many ties with Marvin Jones Jr. here, and I think a lot of the Georgia beat, too, immediately think of Florida State here. So we'll see. I think there's some got to get here back on a visit again, but don't have to do too much of educating Marvin Jones Jr. on what the Florida State program is bringing in. It's good too to see. It's such a interesting situation too because Florida State's facing against Georgia here in this Orange Bowl. So it's pretty funny how life works. But it was a wild recruitment that we were covering for a while, and Marvin Jones Jr. thought highly of Florida State there at the end, and they did quite about as much as they could in that recruitment, but ended up going with Kirby Smart. But like you said, it's not fitting correctly in what maybe scheme-wise that Marvin Jones could be playing and better under Adam Fuller, what Coach JP does at defensive end position, and what you could look forward to playing time-wise too, which Florida State obviously loses Jared Verse after this season.
And I will say Marvin started to finally play some more down the stretch. He was really only getting 10, 15 snaps for the first half of the season. Then the last 4 games, 26 snaps against Ole Miss, 23 against Tennessee, and then 30+ against Georgia Tech and Alabama. So he finally started to see playing time, but he still wasn't really being rotated in as a pass rusher. I mean, I think his highest opportunity was 8 pass rushing snaps in a game. I feel like he's too talented to be that limited. I feel like Florida State would give him that chance.
Yeah, actually made his first career start in that SEC championship loss to Alabama. Finished the season. We'll see if he plays in the bowl game, but right now has accumulated 12 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. But I think that's why Florida State, you look at some of these recruitments that have went down to the wire where Florida State has lost out, and this one a little bit of a different case since Jones Jr. is a legacy to Florida State. But when some of these guys hit the transfer portal that Florida State originally lost out on, that's why these high school recruitments and these pre-existing relationships are so important in, potentially these second recruitments. It didn't quite work out with Mims, but Florida State was able to get him on campus when he entered the transfer portal from Georgia back, whenever that whole saga went down. And it'll be something to watch over the next couple of years because Florida State, they've been in it with a lot of highly touted players across the country, and it just hasn't quite worked out. But when these guys hit the portal and look for new homes, Florida State right there ready to take them in.
Man, this transfer portal craziness is – I thought recruiting was wild, but man, oh man, whenever you're able to build these relationships like what we're talking about with Marvin Jones Jr. and these guys go on to play for another team and then they open it up and say, hey, I'm ready to enter the transfer portal and find somewhere else. Sometimes having those close ties, which I think Mike Norvell has done a really good job, and along with the coaching staff, keeping a good relationship and good ties, even after if they pick elsewhere, goes a huge, long way. So, we'll see what ends up happening there with Marvin Jones Jr., but it would be a solid fit for Florida State and a need at that defensive end room. And I'm going to I'll harp on it every week moving forward, but gotta add in some defensive tackle help. I mean, now with Florida State players leaving in the transfer portal, like a guy, if it does end up happening with Malcolm Ray, got to start finding some extra help there on the inside moving forward. That's something that Florida State's got to do, not only in the high school recruiting trail, but gonna have to pursue that in the transfer portal this offseason.
Hell, right now you're looking at 4 scholarship defensive tackles on the roster who are eligible to return next year. And who knows what Daryl Jackson and Joshua Farmer are going to do. They're half of those numbers I'm talking about.
Yeah, literally. And you haven't even been able to.
You'd love to find another Braden Fisk if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are very rare to come by. But we'll see what Odell Higgins and Adam Fuller are able to do. But speaking of recruiting, I want to jump into some recruiting talk here, gentlemen. Big weekend. Florida State going to be hosting some big time Florida State commits, also some targets. But KJ Bolden, someone that Florida State actually went and visited with earlier this week, and did a home visit. But KJ Bolden, Auburn's pursuing very hard here, and Florida State still has him committed, but got to see a lot of the coaching staff go visit him. Also got Cam Davis, Florida State's prize running back commit in that 2024 class. Maybe some other names, D-Lou, that you could mention and throw to me on what some FSU fans should be looking into this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, right now it looks like 6 high school official visitors are going to be in Tallahassee this weekend. There's been a couple cancellations over the last 48 hours, but right now the guys coming in, all of them are actually committed to Florida State. You've got 5-star safety KJ Bolden, who, like you said, Florida State trying to hold off Auburn and Georgia here down the stretch. So definitely big to have him finally come in for his official visit on the final weekend before the dead period leading up to early signing day. You've also got 4-star defensive end Armando Blunt, who flipped to FSU from Miami a couple months ago. Hurricanes are still here trying to make a late push, get him to flip back and stay home. And another one, it's good that Florida State has saved this OV for right now to have him here instead of in Coral Gables. And outside of that, some guys who have been committed and are solid with the Seminoles going into the early signing period, which is 4-star running back Cam Davis, 4-star cornerback Jamari Howard, who just committed a couple weeks ago, 4-star wide receiver Luane McCoy, who's been pledged to FSU since back in the spring, and then also 4-star offensive tackle Manasi Ititi, who flipped to Florida State from USC a little bit back. So those guys are also coming in for their OVs. We mentioned the transfer quarterbacks earlier. We'll see if there's any more additions leading up to Friday. But right now, the 2 biggest is just keeping KJ Bolden and Armando Blunt in the fold to, end off what has been a very successful recruiting cycle so far for Florida State.
I was going to mention, too, I saw Jordan Travis. He posted on one of his socials of him being back in Tallahassee. I wonder if he's going to do any kind of recruiting. I would imagine if he's in town, obviously going through some big-time rehab there, but I would imagine that he'd be sitting down with these quarterbacks coming in and, really being transparent of what this program's about, how they've done their climb, and just the expectation of Mike Norvell and how things are ran in Tallahassee. And I would imagine he's been doing a lot of recruiting pitches, just like Jared Verse did this past weekend as well. But that's just great. That'd be huge for Florida State. It's a massive recruiter, but just to sit down with these guys and really just lay out what it's like to be a starting quarterback in Tallahassee and what is called upon you in a lot of different ways. And a lot of that is too big time leadership in that locker room. That's something that Jordan Travis kind of had to develop on his own. Wasn't expected to be where he is now, I think. And, he had to work on that. And that's something that I think he's going to, relay to these guys that are visiting, that are veterans. They've been in multiple locker rooms, but for these 2 talented guys, that would be huge to have Jordan Travis there with them on the recruiting weekend.
I'd be surprised.
If you want to follow the visits like we do in recruiting, sometimes Jordan Travis does have an event planned at the Vintage Store Picked in Tallahassee on Friday. So maybe they're using him to push more on DJ. We'll see.
And if he is in Tallahassee, I'd be surprised if he doesn't do his part to kind of throw his hat in the ring and, talk to these guys about his decision and why he thinks they should continue their respective careers in Tallahassee. I actually noticed, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, but Jordan Travis started following Cameron Ward on Instagram. And then, 48 hours later, here we are with the news that he'll be coming to Tallahassee for an official visit. So Jordan Travis, like Jared Verse, those are two guys that love Florida State, love this coaching staff, and have done whatever they've been needed to do on and off the field during their time with Florida State to help the program get better in a multitude of ways.
So we got a question here. We're talking about it in the production meeting, but I think it's worth speaking here on it. Jeremiah Smith, number 1 ranked player in the 2024 class, really, really, really talented wide receiver. Florida State has been pushing here to make a flip from Ohio State to the Seminoles. We're talking about it, D-Lou, and I think Florida State's going to do as much as they can here to potentially get that flip, but kind of more leaning towards this is just going to be one of those wild early signing day kind of frenzies.
You never know. I mean, Florida State, they've given it their best shot. They purposely saved that official visit to host Jeremiah Smith, this late in the recruiting cycle to kind of get some momentum here. And, it looks like in this case, it kind of worked out exactly how Florida State wanted, where you bring him in for an official visit right after, he's already in town for the state championships, which he absolutely dominated to get a ring to close out. Well, actually, they're going to have one more game. That's why. So he can't visit anywhere this weekend because his high school is playing in basically like a national championship type of game against another highly regarded high school. So they're going to be playing this weekend. He's not going to be able to go to another school. So Florida State actually ended up getting what looks like the final visit to a school before Jeremiah Smith signs on December 20th. So I really think Florida State's done everything they can here with, Mike Norvell and Ron Dugans and this entire coaching staff making a big push for Jeremiah Smith. And you've seen the production on the field with Johnny Wilson the last 2 years, Keon Coleman leading the ACC in touchdowns and coming in and having a huge year during his one season, likely one season in Tallahassee. He hasn't declared yet, but we're expecting him to. So I think Florida State, they've given it their best shot, and we're going to see where everything falls a week from today. I always think it's interesting, when a prospect who's been committed to somewhere for a while, Jeremiah Smith, you can see committed to Ohio State since December of last year, but when they go into these signing days and they're still going to make an announcement, that's always interesting to me. It seems like it's going to come down to Florida State, Miami trying to flip him from his commitment to Ohio State. I think FSU has the better shot to do so as of now. And, we'll see if they're able to make one last push here and kind of get it over the top these next 7 days.
There's also a question here about bowl game practices. When does that begin? We got word today on the schedule for Florida State, and they'll be hitting the practice fields in preparation to face Georgia next week. They're going to be practicing on Tuesday around 10 o'clock, kind of around that same time frame as they did earlier in the season. And then they'll go through and start their preparations then. But they're going to begin practice and bowl prep officially on Tuesday of next week, which, D-Lou, you'll be there in attendance, of course, at the practices. And then we'll also be hearing from Mike Norvell on that Wednesday, the day after the first day of bowl prep, to talk National Signing Day.
Yeah, Florida State's been having some practices, but they'll finally let us back out there next week after nearly a 3-week hiatus. And like you said, we got to open practice on Tuesday and Thursday. FSU is going to practice on Wednesday, but it'll be closed. We're going to speak with Norvell and likely some of the assistants, I would imagine, for the early signing day stuff. And, then it'll be on to game week in Fort Lauderdale. It's all coming real quick.
I know. And I was going to say, too, you go into these practices is going to be actually pretty big for you. It's going to feel like going to NFL practices here with the Bucks. Who's available, who's not, who's actually there, who's intending on playing, who's practicing.
Too bad I can't tell you.
I know, right? You can't really, I guess, tell the fans unless, though, you see Keon Coleman come in, helmet, pads, he's practicing, get on video, boom, get up on socials. And then also, too, I think there's a plethora. People want to know if Pat Payton comes up, he's practicing, still got a week till you'll at least go view Tuesday's practice. But is a guy like Rodney Hill intending to being out there, there's a lot of question marks going into this bowl game prep on players intending on playing in this Orange Bowl, because we haven't specifically heard outside of Johnny Wilson, who said he's opting out of the Orange Bowl. There hasn't been any official word from other players. And I think that's something I'm intrigued by of, seeing who y'all end up getting out there and actually suiting up to practice next week.
That's what makes this such a fun time. And, I remember last year Florida State had, 15 guys or so entered during the winter window, about where we are right now. And the majority of those players ended up staying with Florida State, going through the bowl game practices, and then dressing out for the Cheez-It Bowl. I think there was even a couple who ended up playing in that game against Oklahoma. So it seems like as of now, the majority of guys who have announced their intentions to move on are probably going to stick with FSU and finish things out through this game in the Orange Bowl against Georgia. I did clarify, CJ Campbell specifically informed me that he will still be with the team, even though he's exploring his options elsewhere right now. Was on an official visit to Florida Atlantic over the weekend. So we'll see what happens. That's what makes this so fun. Everything is it's fluid. It's a toss up. It's like this one day, but it's like that the next day. And, can't wait for the window to be over.
Mm-hmm. Oof. Hey, it creates for some entertainment. I know Florida State fans, after what they had to deal with a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks now, would like some relaxation and just enjoy some nice bowl game prep and have a lot of their stars and their starters play against Georgia, because I think a lot of FSU fans kind of curious. Of course, you don't have Jordan Travis and you're not going to have Johnny Wilson, but you're kind of curious of what Florida State would look like against a program like Georgia and what they can bring. Definitely defensively, what Florida State showed in that ACC championship. And I think, we're really caught up in the college football playoff, but Florida State's got to play in an Orange Bowl. They've got to play against Georgia, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they match up against the Bulldogs and seeing where FSU is at a program. And like I said, it's hard to really get a true test because you don't have that game-changing quarterback in Jordan Travis. But still, if you just want to look specifically on the defensive side, man, I'm really, really intrigued what they end up putting out there for us in a couple weeks when we're down there in Miami. Let's jump into some really, really fun stuff here. And we won't spend too much time on it because, Visa, you're sick anyways. Leonard Hamilton's making you sick.
In more ways than one.
Yeah.
USF comes from Tampa, and they come they beat Leonard Hamilton 88-72.
I'm not.
It's kind of to the point. Old Yeller. If you haven't watched that, maybe go and watch it. You'd probably get the gist of what I'm bringing up here, but it's over.
I refuse to acknowledge that game. That I just don't think that USF game happened. I just want to get it out of my mind. It's been a bad December on just all fronts, if we're being 100% honest. Ready to just get to January. Just ready for it. I'm convinced nothing good is going to happen this month, just at all. So that's where I'm standing right now. The only thing I really want to talk about when it comes to basketball is there was a court ruling in the case of Ohio versus the NCAA that will allow any multi-time transfer immediate eligibility for at least the next 2 weeks until December 27th when they have another hearing. It's a temporary restraining order. So that'll give a guy like Primo Spears the chance to be able to play. Whether Coach Hamilton plays him or not, still up in the air. This really just came down, a few hours ago. But the NCAA said they're not going to retroactively punish anybody or declare them ineligible if they play in these next few games over this couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we can see Primo on the floor because I really just want to see someone that can score the basketball because we just haven't seen that. USF was so physical with Florida State, and they couldn't get anything going. They couldn't get passes side to side. They couldn't get downhill, and they simply need a guy like Primo Spears that can get up shots.
We had one good episode of basketball this season, and
yeah,
I think that's all we're gonna have.
Yeah, I'll say 1.5 because I said I was drinking the Kool-Aid before the Florida game, and then after the Colorado game, I was pretty excited. So I'll say 1.5. But yeah, it's gone downhill quickly. And
That's tough.
Just a spoiler warning: it's not going to get any better Saturday. SMU's got a really, really good defense, and I'm probably at the point where I was last season, where I'm just going to pick them to lose every single game until they prove me otherwise.
Yeah, you got SMU, and then you got North Florida coming in. Who did North Florida beat FSU last year?
Yep.
I think so.
I love how Logan knows. He
knew before I knew it.
I know like one of the players on their team, so
I've tried to put last season out of my mind. They did not play UNF last year, so you lied, Logan.
2 years ago. It was 2 years ago, though.
And 2 years ago,
at home.
Florida State won that game. It was closer than it needed to be, but they did win that game 2 years ago. So don't get on here and start lying, Logan. It's not a good look.
Dustin led me into it.
I thought that they did. They lost to
UCF and Stetson and Siena.
Team in Florida, yeah. Maybe it was
Stetson's in the land.
Yeah, trust. I've been to Stetson's campus. It is terrible. I can't believe that is quite a team to lose to.
Yeah, I wasn't very happy about it. Like last year was just a shock. Like I wasn't mad. I was physically mad at the USF game.
Let me flip this real quick. I don't want to end it off here, but Herbstreit put out a tweet earlier this evening. This is from Chris on Facebook. How about the Herbstreit Twitter rant crying session? And yeah, Kirk Herbstreit took full advantage of how many characters he could put into Twitter. And you knew it was coming too. I mean, he was getting blasted by FSU fans, also a lot of college football fans too. But Kirk Herbstreit here for our audio listeners. I know our live stream people viewing in can see what he tweeted, but this is Kirk Herbstreit. I don't really think I'm gonna go through all of this.
I was gonna say, please do.
I don't think I'm gonna go through all this.
We'll be here too long, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and summary here, he is quote tweeting someone that is talking about obviously FSU and Alabama, how Florida State didn't get into the college football playoff, and he says Alabama is better, full caps and a couple of exclamation points. So is Texas, so is Michigan, so is Washington, so is Oregon, so is Georgia. He says he watches 10 to 15 games a week live from September to early December. He's talking about the most deserving. If the college football playoff wants to switch up things and put in the most deserving, then Florida State would be in there, but Florida State isn't the best four. He brings up some days of Bobby Bowden, also to just the brand that Kirk Herbstreit loves a ton. And, you know, he hates that an undefeated Florida State team has been left out of the college football playoff. And he ended it with, I'm a big fan of Coach Norvell and his team and wish the Noles nothing but the best.
I'll say a few things before my voice goes out on me. How can you say all these teams are better than Florida State when Florida State was 5th? But yeah, you have Oregon. You say Oregon and Georgia and all of them are better. If it's fact, because that was the big thing a few days ago, was Florida State hates facts and they hate information. If all these teams are better, then why is Florida State 5th? Mm-hmm. This is not facts. Because we have a human committee, it is opinions. Who you think is the best is an opinion. There's no facts to drive this. Besides the fact that Alabama lost the game and Florida State didn't, but I digress, and that's all I'll say.
The only thing that I've got to add on it is just tell PETA I'm kicking a dog.
Oh, damn.
Where's Mike Vick when you need him?
All right, that's
damn. Oh man, it's been
too much
for our new listeners or viewers. Yeah, this isn't our usual type of show. No, honestly, I think a lot of FSU fans want to mind us getting a hall pass there on a few things that have been said on the show the last couple of weeks, because they've also probably thought about it. But enough with the dog tweets. I'm ready to unfollow them. I already didn't like it at first.
And the funny thing was, like, it was starting to die down, like, slowly. Like, the pressure wasn't there all the way like it was for, like, the past week and a half. Yeah. And he tweets that just back. Full blast again.
We're back at it, baby. The train rolls on. Put some more coals in there, and it's ready to go. Florida State's fan base is all over Kirk Herbstreit right now, and a handful of other analysts, too, that have switched to Greg McElroy. We didn't really have time to talk about what analysts' thoughts and such, and maybe we'll talk about that next week.
Or you could just read my article.
A lot of analysts switching up, man. Or, yeah, read your article, the column that we put on NoleGameDay.com was definitely a piece that I think a lot of FSU fans would relate to at the same time.
Kirk is building that shield because I'm pretty sure he just put up a couple of days ago. He got a new puppy, so now we gotta add multiple dogs to.
I think he has like 4 dogs. But I think Ben's the one that travels.
It's right here. 4 days ago. Here's Big Ben meeting his new puppy for the first time.
Great. Yeah, but I think he has other dogs as well.
Yeah. Just not to rile anybody up. It's already 8 o'clock. People need to have their dinners and enjoy the rest of their evenings and finish off their week and some peace. But Kirk Herbstreit not really helping himself there, but you just knew that eventually that he would snap, and he kind of did on the Pat McAfee show a little while ago. Talking about a lot of didn't want to name the group of people, but definitely Florida State fans or any kind of college football fans in favor that Florida State got snubbed and screwed. Tell them that a lot of people are bitching, literally, unquote, bitching about it. So,
just to pivot quickly, looks like LJ McCray just put up a post, and Florida State did the in-home visit tonight. Mike Norvell, JP, Adam Fuller, Coach Odell, and Pat Surtain all there for that one. So I guess they were in LJ McCray's living room whenever the Rodney Hill news went down. Mike Norvell's smile in this picture looks like he's smiling through the pain a little bit.
He's had a few of those.
Like I said earlier, a lot of this stuff happens when coaches aren't in town, and should be a pretty interesting weekend before bowl prep begins next week. I wish I was there.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's one of those days where
we're only getting started.
It's one of those days where you walk into practice, you printed out your roster, and you're looking around, like checking, like, all right, he's here. Who's
here? Who wants to play football for Florida State where you just won 13 games, went undefeated, got an ACC championship? Come on, man. Come on. Someone's got to want to play, right? I think some things will be handled, and honestly, not just maybe the coaching staff, but hopefully some of these leaders in the room sit down with some of these guys and figure some things out. But yeah, make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Also, too, before you guys leave on YouTube, smack that like button. Appreciate everybody. If you're new here, we go live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. We'll be giving some practice observations next week, so make sure you guys tune into this one. It's probably going to be a big show for that, so make sure you guys tune in for that. We'll be here live at 7, and as always, you can just follow this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe so you get notified every time we release a new episode. But yeah, appreciate everybody hanging out with us this evening. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's week. And like I said, make sure you're staying tuned to NoleGameDay.com. There's tons of stories dropping, transfer portal, recruiting visits, interviews, big news stories, everything imaginable as we get prepared for Florida State to take on Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Everybody have a great rest of y'all's week. Peace.
Mama told me not to say a word. 17, 5, same color t-shirt.